you need to wake up because this has been happening. We've been telling you that this has been happening before the Epstein files were released. And after the Epstein files were released, some of y'all still don't believe it. And I don't know what's up with y'all. Wake up.
What's up, King Son? Man, you doing it, man. You deserve it, Daddy. You putting in that work. Proud of you. I love you. Yeah.
Meek Mills, you at a Diddy party dressed in matching outfits. Women don't even do that no more, fam. And you got a midget between y'all legs? I knew you was strange when you was bunny hopping for them white boys. Man, come on out the closet, man. Come on.
Right now, as Sean Diddy Combs remains at the center of one of the most closely watched federal trials the hip-hop world has seen in years, a voice from Philadelphia has suddenly broken through the noise with a message that feels impossible to ignore. Meek Mill did not step into this moment with a polished statement or a carefully measured press release. Instead, he emerged first through blunt, emotionally charged social media posts, then sat down with Complex to confront the growing cloud of theories, whispers, and suspicion that have been orbiting his name for more than a year.
You understand? So I can imagine him play fighting with Lil Rod. Because, you know, a lot of people could say what they want to say about Diddy. You know, he got a knuckle game. He will fight you. You know what I'm saying? You his size, you understand? Around your size, something like that, he would fight you. He had a knuckle game. He wasn't that dude that like people try to say he was some old scared ass nigga. Nah, he would fight you. You understand? So I could see with a person like Lil Rod, he probably was roughing him up, grabbing him, groping him, you know what I'm saying? Acting like he playing with him, but he actually want him to do what he want him to do. So, like I said before, that's in the past. So when I read it from Lil Rod, I see he's doing the same shit in the future.
So he was doing this with females too back then when you was around.
Right. That's how him and Kim got into the fight, and he, you know, play fighting. He used to play fight with the pillows, like the pillow fight, that dumb that, you know, that's kid shit to me. But if that's the way they do, that's the way they do. You understand? He used to do it with Kim all the time.
So the horseplay was his way of grooming you in a sense.
Well, that grooming, that's some new. You know what I'm saying? We didn't call it grooming back then. That his horseplay was a way of letting you know I could really hurt you if I wanted to. You get it? I could really hurt you. And that's what that kid probably felt. Yo, why he doing me like that? Oh, he just playing with you. No, he was letting you know if I turn this up, I could really hurt you.
And that was his way of trying to get you to be submissive to him.
Right. He's letting you know. He's putting in your mind. Listen here, bro. He's trying to put in his mind, we're playing now. But if I really want to turn on you, it's on. You ain't got no wins. So that kid is feeling, yo, listen here. In his mind, if you read the documents, in his mind, he was so scared that when he went to other people in the camp and said, why did he treat me? Why did he doing this and doing that? They said, oh, he just playing with you because he love you. He like you. He was, no, he was trying to instill that fear in you that he had in you. And he won.
And what made that decision land with so much force was not only the substance of what he said, but the atmosphere surrounding it, the pressure of the moment, and the deeper questions his words seemed to pull into the light about the world he and Diddy once navigated side by side. This is where the story becomes more complicated than a simple denial, because when Meek's comments are placed against the full backdrop, they begin to look less like one artist defending himself and more like a rare crack in a much larger culture of silence that has shadowed the Diddy controversy from the beginning. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer just about one name. It becomes about who may have known more than they ever admitted, who was present in rooms the public still does not fully understand, and who has chosen, very carefully, to remain completely silent while the speculation kept building. Meek, at least publicly, chose another route, But before any of that can be understood, there is one crucial piece of context that changes the entire framing of this story, and it is the part many people rush past while forming instant conclusions online.
How you feel about this Meek Mill and Diddy situation? Like Meek Mill, saying no Diddy and him getting backlash, people feeling like, he being fake because, he had a relationship with Diddy. Like, how you feel about that?
My man, I can't judge Meek Mill as a man. I don't know Meek Mill as a person. You understand? And if he wants to say no Diddy, no homo, no this, no that, that's his choice. I know a lot of Philly dudes and they strong out there, and some of my people are cool with Meek Mill. You understand? People. Some of my people are cool with Meek Mill's people. Meek Mill was a young guy, and Diddy was an influencer, and he may have influenced a lot of things that Meek Mill got caught up in the game in. Brother, I don't know Meek Mill as a man. You understand? I know some of his people through my people who knows his people. If Meek Mills want to say no Diddy, if Meek Mills want to say no homo, I don't have a problem with Meek Mill doing that. Meek Mill's got to deal with what he got to deal with based on the relationship him and Puff had. Dressing alike, being cozy, Puff calling him daddy, saying little innuendos to him. People are looking at that and saying Meek Mill is wrong for saying no Diddy. But you can't tell a man how to spend his money and how to make love to his wife or his Diddy. So, I don't know. I don't know, Mike. I just don't know.
Nah, I feel you, man. I get it, man. I see where you're coming from. But I gotta ask you about this party, right, that Diddy threw for Meek Mill. You heard about how the owner, she came out saying that she found used condoms, lubricant, razor blades, powder, blood on the bed sheets. You heard about this?
No, what happened is that Diddy had rented a mansion out for Meek Mill's birthday party, and he had rented it for like $25,000. I remember we rented one of Cher's mansion out, you know what I'm saying? And that's the day he had fired his cook, but that's a whole nother story. You know what I'm saying? It was me, Wolf, Mace, was Ock staying there? No, it was just me, Wolf, Mace, Puff, and there was one other person staying in the mansion. But anyway, long story short is that they came recently. This happened a long time ago, but they recently just made a statement that they found loads of cocaine. I wonder what they did with the cocaine, because they didn't turn it over to the police. They said they found loads of cocaine, razor blades. They said that the sheets were bloody, nasty. They found a whole lot of used condoms. And it was a Diddy party, giving in Meek Mill's honor for his birthday. I was like, yo, wow. They said it was disgusting the way that they left the place. So I know they got hit with another bill on top of that $25,000 and the different deposits they had to put down for cleanup and all this other stuff.
Meek Mill was never directly named in any court filing, not even once. What actually happened was far more indirect and in some ways far more revealing. Rodney Jones, Lil Rod, filed a civil lawsuit against Diddy, and inside that filing appeared an allegation that Diddy had once spoken about a personal encounter involving a rapper, identified only through a vague description, a Philadelphia artist who had dated Nicki Minaj. That single line was enough to ignite a storm, because in today's internet culture, suggestion often travels faster than proof. And once that door opened, the silence around it may have made the theories feel even louder. That single, almost throwaway description didn't need detail to become powerful. It only needed attention. And within hours, the internet seemed to supply everything it lacked.
You can't be that guy at the gay party getting mad at the gay dudes hitting on you.
Right.
You at they function. So now you gonna be homophobic in here?
Why?
You the jerk right now. You the clown. You at they shit getting mad. They try to see what's to you. Yo, dumbass.
Give me a take on the flack that Meek Mill has gotten throughout all this. You know,
Meek Mill's situational awareness is just low, bro. Like that's all it is. But the man had his Amazon account hooked to his Twitter. He buying dildos and everything. It's showing on his Twitter, bro.
you can't do that.
Look that up. That's real. He just crazy, bro. Like that's all it is. Like, you know, I feel like Meek is an honorable dude. He just kind of, he just don't be up to speed a lot of times.
Is that audio real? What are you getting?
I don't know. That audio, I can't confirm that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because my thing is this, like the feds announced that they have a video of Diddy on camera assaulting a male. You see what I'm saying? So like, if they making these type of announcements, bro, if they had anything on Meek Mill, bro, like that's everywhere. Because he just got out of jail and then got off of probation, got a judge fired and all type of things. Like, so it's people who want to see him look bad.
Right.
So if they had it, it'd be out.
One post turned into dozens, then hundreds, as an avalanche echoed each other's blogs. Algorithms elevated the most provocative interpretations, and suddenly Meek Mill's name was orbiting claims that had never explicitly identified him in the first place. And here's where the tension quietly deepens, because while the original filer never named him, the narrative unfolding online began to feel, to many observers, as though it had. That subtle shift from implication to assumption may be where the real story begins to unravel, because it raises a question that lingers beneath the surface. How quickly does repetition start to feel like truth?
And they probably embarrassed for the fact to see that Meek Mill's, one of the street guys that came out of there, got caught up in this Hollywood, whereas that he's dressing like, he dressing the same, he dressing like Diddy, hugged up with Diddy. I think that Lil Rod know a lot of, but I know this. Two men dress alike, it's just like two men laying down. When they both get up, they both homos. And that's real talk, bruh. My man, you go to a party, dog, and the same shirt you got on, I'm taking my shirt off. I'm walking around in a t-shirt. And then, not to blow Meek Mill's up out the water or anything like that, it was said that they checked his Google search and all the other and he was searching for some online gay porn and all that other shit.
Oh, wow.
That shit is crazy, bro. But listen, those are what, you know, it's crazy that money, that lifestyle, and you trying to fit into something get you. These guys never set out to do all this. Meek Mills, when he got into the game, he didn't set out to be questioning about his manhood with Diddy. But he put himself in that position.
When Meek finally addressed the situation directly, there was a noticeable edge in his voice, not just defensive, but almost incredulous at how far the narrative had drifted from the documented reality. He emphasized that the lawsuit itself was never centered on him, pointing out that several major components of the case, RICO allegations, breach of contract claims, even emotional distress arguments had already been dismissed by a judge, leaving behind a far narrower legal scope than what headlines had implied. That distinction, while technical on paper, carries enormous weight in perception, and Meek seemed to understand that the public conversation had skipped right past it, because in the space between legal fact and viral storytelling, something else had taken shape, something harder to correct once it spreads. And if that gap can redefine one person's image overnight, what does that say about how fragile reputations have become in the digital age?
Meek Milk. As far as I'm concerned, he Meek Milk. I ain't calling him Mill no more, that's Milk. That's Meek Milk. Added to the honeycomb. You got a meal.
So you believe the Dwayne Martin story, that could have happened?
Of course, everybody know that shit. Everybody knew they was just ain't nobody know Dwayne was folding him over like that, taking him to Pound Town. And all these black running around marrying these sitting there convincing other women to go chase a fag. Go get you.
Yeah.
Look at my isn't he? Can you imagine if these told the truth about their relationships? I want you to meet my husband. He a fag. Would you like to come over? I'll make cookies.
Now, Jack, you know...
That's what these is doing. Hey, young man, come on over. My husband just wants to touch you for a little while on camera. I promise you, you won't feel a thing. Sniff this.
Okay. So, Jack,
Really? You stand on red carpets with this and you sell an image of lies. Then you influence the public and ask the public to covet and want your life. Who wants that? Who jealous of that? Bunch of whack too afraid to find a real man and real love. So you marry a faggot for a Birkin bag and then turn your head while he's f***ing a bunch of kids. I don't feel sorry for none of you, bitch. Don't y'all sit around writing your books, telling your sob stories. He was a going in, you should have known he was gonna be a You married that and made babies with it. Look at Nicki Minaj. You got married level 3 spenders. And do you know since then, she done moved out. She don't live at the house they was living at no more. Kenneth there by herself. She literally got him a zoo. And she fills it with who don't mind rough.
By the time he chose to speak at length, Meek approached it from two very different angles, almost as if he understood that one format alone couldn't contain the full weight of what he wanted to say. His posts on X in May 2025 came across sharp, immediate, and emotionally charged, like someone trying to stop a moving train with words alone. But when he sat down with Complex weeks later, the energy shifted, slower, more deliberate, more reflective, revealing not just what he thought, but how carefully he had been processing everything behind the scenes. Still, even in that calmer setting, a quiet tension lingered beneath his delivery, as if certain details were being chosen just as carefully as others were being left unsaid. And that contrast between urgency and restraint creates an unsettling curiosity. Was this simply clarity, or was it also control? He acknowledged attending some of Diddy's gatherings over the years, specifically mentioning New Year's celebrations, but he drew a firm and deliberate boundary when it came to the now infamous white parties that had become central to so much speculation. According to Meek, those were not spaces he occupied, a distinction he seemed intent on making unmistakably clear. Yet what stood out even more was his description of the atmosphere he did witness. He spoke about an environment where substances were visibly present, something he framed as common in those circles, while distancing himself from participating in that world. That admission, while measured, adds a layer of texture to the story, because it neither confirms nor dismisses broader claims. It simply opens a window, then stops short of letting you see too far inside. And sometimes, what isn't fully explained can feel just as significant as what is.
Justin Bieber just came out and said that Diddy and Usher were drinking his blood in the form of adrenochrome. This is happening, y'all. The Epstein files is not just pedophilia. There's cannibalism in there. They're eating children. They're drinking blood. They're harvesting blood for adrenochrome. For those of you that still don't believe, I don't know where your mind is at, but you need to wake up because this has been happening. We've been telling you that this has been happening before the Epstein files were released. And after the Epstein files were released, some of y'all still don't believe it. And I don't know what's up with y'all. Wake up.
In the interview, he leaned further into structure and personal boundaries, describing how he rarely moved alone, instead surrounding himself with a trusted circle from Philadelphia, people who grounded him and, in his view, kept him from drifting into spaces that didn't align with his values. He spoke about reputation not as something fragile, but as something already proven among those who truly know him, suggesting that the loudest criticisms were coming from voices disconnected from his real life. But then he introduced a perspective that shifts the conversation into something much broader and potentially more controversial, arguing that much of the online backlash wasn't entirely organic. He claimed that what appeared to be overwhelming public opinion may have been significantly amplified, even shaped by coordinated bot activity. And if that were even partially true, it raises a deeper, more unsettling question. How much of what we believe is actually real, and how much of it is engineered to feel that way?
Now I see with Diddy, as soon as he sued that liquor company, Diageo, CNN drops that video. He's a cheap dude. If he would have paid Cassie what she was owed for getting urinated on by the Punisher, that's crazy. You got a guy named the Punisher in the house with your wife? What's really going on? Now, he didn't pay her out. He ended up paying her $30 million. Innocence don't cost that much. So there you gotta think about it. Jeffries, human trafficking, he gets arrested. They say he's unfit to stand trial. Harvey Weinstein beat 2 cases. They just now convicted him on something, but you don't see any of it in the news. He's somewhere at his house relaxing. Jeffrey Epstein,
The files,
not
there.
They were on her desk
Yeah.
one day, the next day they're not there. I know how this game goes because I've been a person people have called to fix situations. You know, I've been somebody who people will call, look, we need this person to look very bad. How can you help us? How much are you gonna pay? Okay, this is what we can do. You feel me? There's been situations where politicians then pissed off people. They'll go out drinking on the town. They'll wake up with in their room passed out. They're gonna call me and tell me what's going on. I'm gonna charge them a fee, and then I'm gonna take that money and go feed families and all type of stuff. And then I'm gonna try to help them out with that situation because they play games like this. You know, something that always happens is if you start to press a celebrity about paternity tests, you might be going into the supermarket, come out, see a gun in your car. Now the police pulling up. Whose gun is this? Now you're going to jail. Those type of things happen. You feel me? So things get very dark in this line of work and in these topics because Diddy was arrested with defaced firearms, hardcore narcotics. His drug mule was arrested, getting on a private jet. These are all things that violate interstate commerce, federal RICO laws. None of these charges was brought up. How can you have defaced firearms, automatic rifles in New York, in your hotel, and no charges get pressed about that? So once I saw that, I say basically they trying to punish him. He thought he was bigger than the program. They want to let him know, like, look, you cannot beat us. Don't play with us. We're going to spank you on the wrist. You're going to sit in jail 5 or 6 years. We ain't going to give you life this time. But next time, you finna get life.
So with a warning.
It's a warning. I knew it was going to happen. That's why I said I'm about to leave. Because I promised my mom I wouldn't be violent no more. Yeah.
What ties everything Meek said together is that his response never stayed confined to his own name. It kept expanding outward, pointing toward a larger pattern he believes is at play. He framed his experience as part of something systemic, suggesting that black artists in particular are more vulnerable to being pulled into narratives built on fragments rather than facts. This wasn't a passing remark or a defensive aside. It was a theme he returned to repeatedly, with a level of conviction that suggests it's been forming long before this moment. And whether one agrees with that perspective or not, it introduces a dimension that can't easily be ignored, because it challenges not just the story, but the system telling it. If even a single vague claim can ripple across dozens of platforms before being verified, then maybe the real question isn't what was said in that filing, but why it spread the way it did, and who or what benefits when it does. What he described next reframed everything, not as a momentary misunderstanding, but as something far more embedded, a kind of systemic distortion, where by the time the truth catches up, the damage is already settled in. He characterized it as a structural form of deformation, a process where an unverified implication can harden into public belief long before any correction has the chance to breathe. He pointed to how a claim that never formally appeared in any court document still found its way into headlines, discussions, and conversations as though it carried official weight. And that transformation from absence of evidence to presence of assumption doesn't happen randomly, which raises a quieter, more unsettling thought. If narratives can evolve this quickly without confirmation, then maybe the real question isn't what was said in that filing, but why it spreaded the way it did, and who or what benefits when it does. Then, almost unexpectedly, Meek shifted the focus away from himself entirely, and this is where the tension sharpens in a different way. Rather than continuing to defend his own position, he posed a question that feels simple on the surface, but grows heavier the longer you sit with it. Why is no one else speaking? It wasn't framed as an accusation, but it didn't need to be. He pointed out that if the environments now under scrutiny were truly as ordinary as some might assume, then others who had been present could easily step forward and describe him that way. Yet according to Meek, that hasn't really happened, not in any clear collective sense. And that absence of voices, that noticeable quiet from people who shared similar proximity, began to feel significant in its own right. Because sometimes silence doesn't just leave a gap, it creates one that people instinctively try to fill. He articulated that observation with a kind of restrained frustration, noting that the lack of public accounts from others who moved within those same circles seemed to carry its own meaning, whether intentional or not. It's a perspective that doesn't directly accuse, but it undeniably invites interpretation, opening the door to a broader conversation about what collective silence can imply during moments of intense scrutiny, especially when the social ecosystem of a powerful figure is being examined under the weight of federal attention. Choosing not to speak, even when speaking might carry little personal risk, can begin to look less neutral.
I would be bodyguarding somebody else and end up at some of his parties. They keep lying and say I work for them. I never said I work for them. That's something that these people do.
Yes.
So they got me in a lawsuit right now saying I pointed a gun at Diddy and protected the lady from him. How am I doing that and working for him? It don't make no sense. So like I've been having a lot of attacks, people trying to discredit me, but I got the receipts. And been a lot of punishment going on. No pun intended.
Yes.
No pun intended. Crazy work. So yeah, I knew it was coming. So I was like, pause. I knew that was going to take place. So I was like, I probably should leave. Because it's like, my mom told me she wanted me to eventually, settle down, have a family, have some children. It's hard to date in this line of work. I never really had many serious relationships. I only had 5 girlfriends my whole life. I don't have no children. I dedicated my life to my path, and it paid off for me. And I'm not damaged, you know, like I'm a gentleman at all times, you know, until it's time, you know. Chivalry has not died, so it's just like, I'm gonna keep doing what I do, but when it comes to this, people gotta always pay attention to the underlying facts. Because if Lynn gets caught with several rifles and cocaine and drugs, Lynn's gonna be having to go to jail.
Yes.
How come he not going to jail?
And that's where the discomfort quietly builds, because it suggests that what isn't being said might matter just as much as what is. Still, there's another angle here that complicates everything. Silence can come from many places: caution, uncertainty, or simply the fear of being pulled into something far bigger than expected. What makes Meek's stance particularly striking is that by speaking at all, he placed himself inside the very standard he was describing. Without explicitly saying it, he was holding himself accountable to the same expectation he was questioning in others, a move that adds a layer of consistency to his argument, regardless of how one interprets the rest. But that choice also carries its own risk, because stepping forward doesn't just clarify, it invites deeper scrutiny. And maybe that's the hidden tension beneath it all. In a situation where silence raises questions, speaking out can create even more. So which one actually protects you? From there, the conversation naturally widens, stretching beyond Meek Mill as an individual and into a pattern that has surfaced in other high-profile cases before. Observers and analysts have begun drawing comparisons, not equivalences, but structural similarities between the unfolding situation around Diddy and the network once associated with financier Jeffrey Epstein. In both instances, the discussion isn't limited to one central figure. It extends outward toward a wider circle of individuals who were present, connected, or adjacent in ways that remain only partially understood. The public discourse around Epstein revealed just how many names could exist within a single orbit without ever being fully examined, and now a similar line of questioning is beginning to form again. Who was there? Who understood the environment? And who chose to remain on the sidelines as the narrative evolved? And perhaps the most lingering thought of all is this: when history shows us how often proximity goes unexplored, are we watching that same pattern quietly repeat itself in real time? What makes the next layer of this story even more compelling is that these aren't just abstract questions floating around online. They closely resemble the exact lines of inquiry prosecutors tend to follow in large-scale conspiracy and RICO-style cases, where accountability can stretch far beyond the central figure. In those situations, proximity alone can become a point of interest, not necessarily as proof of wrongdoing, but as a thread worth pulling. And when you place Meek's comments into that broader legal context, they begin to feel less like isolated statements and more like part of a much wider pattern, one where individuals across the entertainment industry are being quietly and sometimes publicly forced to examine how close they stood to power that may not have been what it seemed on the surface. His decision to step forward early, rather than wait for his name to be pulled further into speculation, mirrors a calculation that others in similar positions may be making right now, even if they haven't said it out loud. Because if there's one thing legal experts often point out, it's that the reach of these cases can extend further than people expect, sometimes touching individuals who once believed their distance was enough to keep them outside the frame. And that realization alone can shift how and when people choose to speak. But then the focus shifts to something more strategic, almost tactical. What did Meek actually achieve by speaking out the way he did? Because timing in moments like this is just as important as content. By addressing the situation head-on, through both unfiltered posts and a formal interview while the trial was still unfolding, he positioned himself in a category that stands apart from quiet avoidance. He became one of the few willing to engage publicly, rather than letting the narrative develop without him. That choice doesn't automatically validate everything he said, but it undeniably shapes perception, and perception, especially in the middle of a high-profile case, carries its own kind of weight. There's a stark contrast between someone who fills the silence with their own voice and someone who allows their silence to be filled by others. And in an environment where speculation thrives on absence, stepping forward can feel less like a risk and more like a form of control.
Jeffrey Epstein's island list. Homie Chris Tucker name on there. There's a bunch of people name on there. But isn't it ironic that they giving us all the details about Puffy and then give us no details about Jeffrey Epstein? So, homie, I just want to remind people, as humble and as meek and righteous as you think your favorite celebrity is, they exist in an evil world. And for them to maintain in that world, they have to be okay with evil things. Whether it's T.I., man, you have to be okay with evil things because you don't get this high. Religious people have always said that evil things and evil high power of principalities exist in high places. Evil exists in high places, huh? How do you think he could do that for so long? And now you got videos of later of him coming out saying, man, they might arrest me for these kind of motherfuckers. Because most evil things is in plain sight. We just don't know what to look for. But I'm gonna say this. He ain't been accused of fucking no babies. So fuck what he did to them people. Because I know it wasn't a freak off. It was a big orgy that they was having. And how you go fuck because I'm a rich and I got these hoes coming in from Texas and they go come to New York and they go but yeah, them hoes want some money for me to how you go hit me with man, I'm getting these hoes something for that pussy. These ain't prostitute. It's a fair exchange. I'm a rich man. Every pussy I get, I got to fly in from another state and be willing to give them something. Man, this the part of the rich and famous life.
At the same time, Meek introduced something that shifted the tone away from strategy and into something far more personal, almost disarmingly so. He spoke about his teenage son navigating school while rumors about his father circulated in real time, filtering through conversations, phones, and whispers in hallways. That detail lands differently because it has nothing to do with legal positioning or public relations. It's about the ripple effect of a narrative once it leaves the internet and enters real life. Suddenly, the conversation isn't just about headlines or allegations. It becomes about identity, about how a person is perceived by the next generation watching it all unfold. And that raises a deeper, more human question. When a story spreads before it's verified, who actually carries the consequences of that distortion? Then he took it a step further, signaling that he wasn't content to simply respond, he intended to investigate. By announcing that he was willing to fund a private effort to uncover what he believed to be a coordinated online campaign targeting him, Meek shifted from defense into pursuit. Whether or not that investigation ultimately produces tangible results almost becomes secondary because the declaration itself changes the narrative. It suggests intent, determination, and a refusal to let the situation settle into ambiguity. And in a court of public opinion, that kind of posture often resonates more strongly than silence ever could because it introduces motion where there was once only reaction. Still, it also opens another layer of curiosity. If there truly was something organized behind the scenes, what would uncovering it reveal, and who, if anyone, would be connected to it? But perhaps the most intriguing elements of Meek's statements are not just what he openly said, but what seems to exist just beneath the surface of those words. When he described the atmosphere at Diddy's events, it wasn't framed as something casual or carefree. It carried an undertone, a sense that these were environments shaped by influence, access, and unspoken dynamics. He spoke about the visible presence of substances, describing it as normalized within those spaces while carefully maintaining distance from it personally. That alone paints a picture, but it doesn't complete it, and maybe it's not meant to, because what stands out even more is the pattern he emphasized. He was never there alone. That detail, subtle as it may seem, carries a weight that's difficult to ignore. Consistently surrounding himself with a tight circle from Philadelphia suggests a level of awareness, maybe even caution, that goes beyond casual attendance. It hints at an understanding, spoken or unspoken, that certain environments require grounding, witnesses, or simply people you trust nearby. And that doesn't necessarily imply wrongdoing, it implies perception. instinct, and perhaps a recognition that not every room operates the same way once the door is closed, which leads to a final lingering thought. If someone moves with that level of intentional presence, what exactly did they sense that others might not have or chose not to acknowledge? What looks at first glance as caution begins to feel more like calculation the longer you examine it. Moving with a trusted circle, avoiding certain spaces, choosing presence carefully, these aren't random habits. They suggest an awareness, whether conscious or instinctive, that some environments carry unspoken variables. And when you pair that with Meek's observation that others who shared those same rooms have chosen near total silence, the picture becomes harder to dismiss as a coincidence. Because silence, especially when it's widespread, doesn't just remove voices from the conversation, it creates a vacuum that invites interpretation. The names that remain unspoken in the Diddy proceedings have for many observers become the most intriguing part of the story, not because of what is known, but because of what remains just out of reach. And sometimes, the absence of clarity becomes the very thing that keeps the story alive.
It's people that went to Diddy parties but never went to the after party.
Two pair of funky lips will say anything. Well, they know what's at the after party. You never heard nobody speak on nothing. Why have they been silent for so long?
It's a lot of hearsay about what goes on.
That's what I'm saying. It's been hearsay. Why did it take the FBI, the government, to come in and say, man, we know he's been doing this. Here's what we got. When there's been hearsay about it all this time and all these years. He's been shielded by them, homie. They never shied away from him. They know he's been beating up Kim Porter. They know he's been torturing Cassie. They know he's been doing it. So why nobody ever shied away from him?
Because he's CEOs that's keeping great relationships.
Man, somebody wrote a book.
All these CEOs are going to his parties. That's how he's keeping the leverage.
How you know?
I read the book.
Oh, okay. I'm about to say with some specifics. How you done told you this? Yeah, you know.
Allegedly.
Oh, okay. It sounds about right. But he CEO and he also an artist. The other celebrity. You're not getting invited to the party. Remember they say you got to tell him no. You got to tell Diddy no, remember? So
yep.
Tyrese said, I'm not going to the after party. Man, they all been to the after parties. You mean to tell me when you first became a star and didn't nobody know who you were and you was trying to get in, you didn't go to the party? You got to keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nobody have pushed back against this culture that Diddy supposed to have created for us in the black entertainment world. There's been no pushback against him. When Jeffrey Epstein started showing up in places, white people started saying, hey man, what is that guy? Who is he? What do he do? How did he become rich? Man, they started giving a pushback. There was never no pushback against Diddy.
What makes this even more complex is that a federal trial, especially one tied to conspiracy-style frameworks, rarely exists in isolation. These cases have a tendency to evolve, to widen, to reveal new layers over time as additional perspectives surface and as the broader structure becomes clearer to those examining it. So when Meek chose to speak early, directly, and on the record, it may have been more than a personal defense. It may have been a strategic decision made with an understanding of how these situations can unfold. Because in cases like this, timing isn't just important, it can define how a person is positioned long after the headlines fade. And that introduces a quiet but powerful question. Did Meek speak simply to respond or to get ahead of something still taking shape? On the surface, this entire situation can be reduced to something simple. One artist publicly separating himself from another's legal storm. But the deeper you look, the less simple it becomes. Meek didn't just reject the narrative attached to his name, he challenged the mechanisms that allowed it to form in the first place. He pointed toward the role of media amplification, questioned why certain voices remain absent and highlighted how quickly unverified ideas can move through digital spaces without resistance. And layered within all of that was a broader reflection on identity, what it means to navigate an industry where perception can shift overnight and where the speed of a story can outpace the truth it claims to represent. That combination, personal defense mixed with systemic critique, is what gives his words a weight that lingers beyond the moment. Meanwhile, the case itself continues to unfold, and with it, a growing sense that what's visible now may only be part of a much larger picture. New details continue to emerge, perspectives continue to shift, and a network of individuals connected directly or indirectly to Diddy's world remains expansive and only partially understood. Federal systems are designed to follow patterns, to connect threads, to build a clearer image over time, and that process rarely stops at the surface, which means the story isn't reaching a conclusion. It's still in motion, still developing, still revealing pieces at its own pace. And that uncertainty creates a tension that doesn't resolve easily, because every new detail has the potential to reshape everything that came before it. So what we're left with isn't just a story about who spoke and who didn't. It's a moment that quietly asks something more personal of everyone watching. When pressure builds, when narratives form, when silence becomes the safer option, what does it actually cost to say nothing? And more importantly, what does it mean if that silence was never as neutral as it seemed? Because long after the headlines change and the attention shifts elsewhere, that question doesn't disappear. It lingers, waiting, unresolved in the background of everything that comes next. Comment below with what you think is really going on. Leave a like if this gave you chills, and subscribe, plus turn on notifications if you want to see more Hollywood secrets.